Awesome. Again, welcome to our third session, Leveraging AI for Student-Centered Learning. And I love the title, Embracing the Now. So often we talk about what is to come and what that future looks like. But we are definitely living in the present with AI in our classrooms and in our practice and with students. And so just seemed like a really appropriate title for what we'll talk about today with our focus on how students are engaging with AI in their classrooms and in their learning process as well. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I think in the chat, you should see there's a link to the slide deck that you can use to follow along with the materials and resources that we are sharing with you this afternoon. You'll also note that we have collected a wide variety of different materials and access pieces that you might really be interested in exploring. And so there's a Wakelet link that's posted there in the chat as well. It's linked on this slide if you're following along. So you'll be able to explore and dig in, maybe save this Wakelet for yourself for future reference to come back really to any of our webinar materials that are posted here, and then the materials and tools as well that we'll talk about during our session. Would also love for you to be part of AI research with us. So we have a research study that's happening right now with the Friday Institute, where we're exploring what teachers' perceptions and attitudes and beliefs about AI in their instruction might be. And so this takes about 5 to 6 minutes for you to complete if you're really being thoughtful about the questions. But your input and your perspectives are really valuable to us. So we would love to hear from you through this research survey what that looks like and what you're thinking about and what's happening in your space, your classroom. And so please take a minute, if you don't mind, to bookmark that and come back to it, or as we go through the first part of our webinar this afternoon, completing the questions for that too. So would love to collect some of that data if you are willing, of course. I work with an amazing group of people, and so I want to make sure that we call them out here in our webinar. I am Emma Broughton, and I'm the Director of Digital Learning at the Friday Institute. And today you'll hear primarily from Kim Farnsworth, who's a research scholar, and also Amy Walter here from the Friday Institute. But I also want to give a shout out to Brittany Miller, Jacqueline Stevens, and Russell Strand Poole, who isn't with us this afternoon, because they have been great thinkers and collaborators, designers, developers for all of the materials that you may have seen over the course of this webinar series, and definitely into session 4 as well next month. So just to give you a little bit of background about the Friday Institute, we are a place where research and policy and practice come together as part of NC State University. And so it's a really unique place to work. It's pretty special. Our role serving K-12 education in North Carolina and beyond. So we get to do amazing supports and materials, professional learning, research, and policy guidance for those types of emerging issues that exist and innovation that exists in our K-12 spaces. And so if you haven't had a chance to visit us here in Raleigh, we would love to have you join us one day and visit us and participate in any of the in-person types of things that we do here as well. You are attending our third of 4 sessions about AI. Our first 2 were the fall and winter of 2023, and we'll wrap up with session 4 when we think about adoption and advocacy. But this session really is about trying with students that use of AI. And so you have come to the right place if you are interested to know, how can I get my students to use AI in my classroom? And what does that look like? And how would I support them? And talk about and think about what that could be for my students. Really, we want to situate that in our webinar series From Awareness to Advocacy, where we hope that you'll feel empowered, you will grow your AI fluency, and there's the potential for us to help transform that teaching and learning that's happening in schools and classrooms. And I mentioned that we are thinking about what that looks like to try AI with our students. And this is our third webinar, really because we've been following this guidance here for the adoption process, starting in session 1, thinking about our awareness and interest, building some curiosity and purpose for AI. Then digging into the right tools for transforming how we think about AI as educators and instructors. Here we are in that trial stage where we're picking those right tools for transforming that learning. And then really in our fourth and final session for this series, how do we consistently integrate and share the successes of what AI can look like with our students? That's our adoption and advocacy. We'll later share with you a resource to be able to showcase and learn from you as part of that fourth session. So stay tuned. Coming up, there'll be a link where we would love to know more about what that looks like in practice in your classrooms and in your spaces. I mentioned the word AI fluency just a minute ago. I want to dig into that just for a second here, because it's really important for us to think about how do we understand, how do we apply, and how do we adapt AI technologies effectively in any educational context. So how I might use AI, or any of my colleagues here, how you might use AI, it's really going to depend upon our role and what that right fit is for us. There's some baseline AI literacy that exists, but the fluency in how we engage with AI shifts and changes as things grow and develop. And so that's a term that I've really come to appreciate when it comes to thinking about how do I dig into AI and use it in my practice. One of the things I wanted to note is we have posted for you the self-assessment link in the chat for you to take a quick survey about where you are as you come into this session. We've been collecting that data along the way, and I wanted to draw your attention to these questions related to a systematic approach to evaluating AI for your content standards or your teaching strategies, the benefits or concerns around AI, and really even the effectiveness then of AI integration in teaching and learning. And we know that we're really at the cutting edge here of what's happening, because so many folks have responded that they don't necessarily have that systematic approach. You see that second column there where people are self-reporting that that's an area for them, a gap for them that they need help and support with. We love to see it's growing in that direction. And we've got a few folks who have adopted something that works for them, we hope. But really, we're looking at how can we foster and support that systematic approach to AI and that AI thinking in our schools and classrooms.
Thank you so much, Emma. We'd like to welcome you to session 3, Embracing the Now, as Emma already highlighted, leveraging AI for student-centered learning. So in this session, we continue our webinar series, from awareness to advocacy, as Emma highlighted. So we're kind of partway through that process there, that cycle. And we want to go ahead and talk today about focusing on some objectives. So the objectives for this session are to identify key strategies for responsible AI in your classroom, align AI with learner needs, academic integrity, and content standards, and continue your journey to AI fluency. So Amy's going to go ahead and share a quick example with us on the next slide.
So if you've ever talked to me, you know I'm a big advocate for using generative AI in your teacher planning and your prep work and to lighten your load. I'm super excited now that we're bringing this to our students. This is a quick example. You can go ahead and hit play. It's Socrat, and it's a tool where you can put in your directions and topic, and then the AI chatbot will basically engage in a debate with your student. So the question was, should we keep the SAT or not? The chatbot, or the AI, I shouldn't call it a chatbot, that's offensive to it. The AI is giving us some information. I typed in my short response. It validated the information for me, gave me some specific details to respond to. I was able to give it information. This is a great tool to use when your kids are trying to work on a debate or flesh out their ideas. When you can't get around to every single kid in the room, you can use this as a way for them to collaborate with something and then evaluate the information. Is this information I want to include in my paper or my debate or my project? Is this information that I haven't thought about previously? So it's a way that we can use critical thinking skills using AI and supporting every individual student. And y'all, I'll tell you, we went back and forth for a long time, me and Socrat, and I got a little petulant with it. it never failed to be polite to me and bring up details, and it redirected me even when I got off task. Just a short example of one way that you can bring AI to your students. We're going to dig into this process a little bit more, but I wanted to show you that.
Thank you so much, Amy. And as she mentioned, we have some other examples to share with you today. So we're excited to do that. So in session 2, in our previous webinar, we shared information about the AI Bill of Rights. And these 5 areas that are highlighted here in this graphic are critical to ensure that we are being responsible when we use AI in general, and especially with our students. If you want to learn more, the link to the AI Bill of Rights is at whitehouse.gov, and it's in the chat. Also, you can visit webinar 2 and take a look and learn a little bit more in detail there, and that link is also in the chat. These 5 principles should inform how we integrate AI in education moving forward. So to be responsible and to be effective leaders with AI, we can navigate the AI maze to ensure ethical, effective, and equitable integration of AI into learning. So we described in webinar 2 how to best navigate the maze, and we're going to continue to navigate that maze in this session and put these principles into practice with our students. So the M in maze reminds us to monitor data privacy. AI is built on data, and we need to ensure that our students' privacy, especially as being minors, is respected and they're properly considered. The A is to assess for accuracy. So although AI can generate vast amounts of content quickly, it also can give us false or inaccurate information. And this is why it's important to include humans in the process. As educators, we need to verify that content is accurate. The Z is to zero in on bias. The content generated by AI is only as good as the data that it is built on. So generative AI uses existing data from a large number of sources, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, but these often include bias, and it is our responsibility to review content for bias and try to mitigate that as much as we can. The E is to evaluate value. So not only should the content we use be accurate and unbiased, it should also provide value to our instruction. So moving on into our maze, as we navigate through that maze, our focus is on the students and the value of AI for students. So evaluating that value of AI generated content, we need to consider the learner's needs, content standards, and academic integrity. These are 3 buckets or aspects that we should consider. There may be more, there probably are more, but these are top of mind in order to provide our students with content that meets their needs, meets the learning standards, and has academic integrity. So how do we put this into action in the classroom? First, we focus on the process of learning more than on the product. So North Carolina's DPI has put together a comprehensive guide, and you can see the link in the chat, for AI implementation in schools. One of the recommendations in this guide is to use AI to promote student reflection and deep learning instead of the end product. And we definitely advocate that, focusing on the learning process. This image here was actually generated by AI by our very own Amy Walter, and it highlights what we will look at as we shift our focus to the process of learning. So the priorities of the learning process include fostering collaborative and personalized learning, providing feedback and opportunities for learner reflection, iterative learning that offers customized learning paths, an emphasis on a growth mindset, and learning that has real-world relevance.
I'll just kind of phrase and capture some of the things that you've talked about here, Kim, with the way that we can think about what that can look like with our students. And so one of the focuses that we have is specific to student-centered learning. And so as we were capturing and thinking about the examples that Amy is about to share, we wanted to really root it in, are we as educators navigating for students? So you see that image there on the left-hand side where teachers are really navigating that maze, and they're being conscious of each of those parts of that acronym, and they are facilitating that process and AI for the student. or navigating it with the students where it's side by side and they all have responsibility for that maze and for engaging with that tool, or navigating by students. And so how do we equip our students to navigate that maze themselves as we think about digital citizenship or digital wellness? How do we make sure that they are asking the right questions that we also want to be asking? And then they are the primary users of AI too. So want to keep that kind of framework in your mind as we look at what our students can be doing as they engage with AI in the classroom.
So our first example, we're going to look at navigating for students. And this is a lot of the work that we've done previously where we're thinking about how we can use this, as adult consumers. But now we're thinking about how do I center my learner needs or my content standards or academic integrity as I'm using AI for my students. So our first example comes from a friend at Rollsville Middle School named Dana Algie. She's a special education teacher, and she navigates AI for her students in order to support and help them. So one example that we have is how she really streamlined some processes. She used Scribe, and Scribe will make screenshots and create a how-to of any process that you do on your computer. So her students were having a hard time sharing documents with her that she could access. So she just went through and shared a document, each of the steps. She didn't have to take screenshots. She didn't have to put in text bubbles. She didn't have to the AI made this for her. And she even said, like, look for your teacher's name. Make sure you click anyone with a link. And then they have very clear visuals, exactly what it looks like on their computer, what she wants them to do with it in a way that they can always access. So it streamlines processes that they have to do a lot and gives them kind of a work guide, a tool so that they don't have to always ask her. So that's just one example of how you can use it for your students to support them. Another example, she used this resource called Question Well. Her kids were engaging with a science text, and it was about resistance to pesticides. She quickly put in what her objectives were. She picked the reading level that she wanted, the text copied in, and she asked it to generate questions. The nice thing about Question Well is it analyzed that text and then it gave her essential questions, which she can then check and see, like, are these really the big ideas I want my kids to get? Filters the questions by learning objectives. So she can look at the multiple choice questions that it made and see how many matched for each objective. Then she's able to select the ones that she wants, delete the ones that she doesn't. It's very quick and easy to edit, and then export that to whatever learning system that she wants to use, or words escape me. But if she wants to do like a Google form, it's quickly put into that Google form. Her kids can access it. She's created a resource to help them study for a class. She used this in a curriculum assistance class to support her students for their gen ed science class. Two examples of the teacher navigating the maze, making choices to make sure she was supporting her learners' needs, aligning with the content area standards, and making sure that she was following academic integrity standards to support her students, for her students. Our next example is about navigating with students. So this is kind of the whole, like, I do, we do, you do. This is the we do, where we're working together with the students and we're teaching them the digital literacy skills they need, being critical consumers so that they can navigate the maze. This is a great example of how an image generator, an AI image generator, could be used in class. And I think we have a video on the next slide. Yes, ma'am.
There are many ways to use AI with students. In this example here, we're looking at an elementary science lesson focused on the 3 states of matter. And I asked the Bing AI image generator, and there are quite a few different AI image generators out there, but Bing is widely available and it's also free. In this example, I prompted it and asked the generator to create an image showing the difference between liquid, solid, and gas in a cartoon style. So you can see the cartoon style here, and you can see the 4 images that Bing generated. As you can see, some of the images are wholly inaccurate, and there are possibly 2 images that might be useful. Having said that, you can use these to prompt a classroom discussion and ask students to explain why a certain image is accurate or is not accurate. And you can have students justify their answers and provide detail for that. Another way you could enhance the activity is generate an image, and then you can ask students to help you co-create by having them suggest characters or animals or other features to add to the image. And you can adapt the images after they've been generated and then regenerate again. So one of the fun things about AI image generation is you can play with the prompts and they can be quite detailed to create the images that you would like. I highly suggest playing around with something like the Bing image creator and seeing what you can come up with to use in your lessons with your students.
And it's a great opportunity to talk to them about, is this information reliable? Is this information correct? Well, it's just like, everything you read on the internet is not true, but teaching kids, this has been generated for us, but we have to be critical about, is this correct or is it not correct? So doing it with your students, with whatever AI you use, is a great opportunity to start really supporting them as they navigate the maze. Because eventually we're going to go to AI use by students. So again, we want to make sure that we're centering our learner needs, the content standards, and academic integrity. We don't want to use an AI tool just because it's cool and fun. We want to make sure it's giving us the value that we need in our classrooms. This is an example of another friend, Paul Cancelleri. He's an 8th grade science teacher in Rolesville, North Carolina. And he is an early adopter in many things. He's a great tech guy. We're going to watch a video where he explains how he has allowed his students to use AI.
I'm Paul Cancelleri. I'm an 8th grade science teacher at Rolesville Middle School in Rolesville, North Carolina. I've been playing around with ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools myself. And through conversations with my students, I knew that my 8th graders had a little bit of limited experience with it. Some of them were using it to help them with work, what some teachers might call cheating. But I really wanted them to see the positive benefits that could come from using a chat tool, a ChatGPT type tool, to kind of be the initial draft generator, and then they could step in and evaluate it, make changes to it. So I took an activity where the goal was to create a persuasive bit of social media that would convince the viewer to agree with whatever their stance was on, in this case, genetically modified organisms. So they started off by choosing their stance, and I told them that it's okay if you don't feel strongly about one or the other, but for the purposes of the exercise, we just have to make the case for whichever choice we made. And then the very next step was to go to an AI tool. In this case, we did use ChatGPT because it's available in my district. And I asked them to ask the ChatGPT tool to provide them with 10 different persuasive slogans, sort of pithy, powerful, impactful statements, the kind of thing that students could write given enough time and enough preparation. But I wanted them to start with ideas that came from the AI tool so that we could get right to the point where they show off what they've learned by evaluating those statements, making sure they're accurate, making sure they're persuasive. Once they chose the pithy, impactful, persuasive statement they liked the best, then they had to show off their knowledge of the standard by building a social media post that included the statement as well as some visuals and some details. And so that's where I really tied in the standard. Yeah, I mean, I loved using persuasion as a technique that the kids get a chance to practice, because I think a lot of teenagers feel like they're pretty good at persuading. They convince their parents to do things all the time. So I knew that would be engaging to them. But in the past, getting them to write something that was very persuasive kind of divided up my class into lots of different tiers. Some kids are naturally good at that. They've got good speaking skills or writing skills already. Some of my kids, especially my non-English learners, my multilingual kids, they're not as good at writing really short, persuasive language. And so in the past, I would have spent a lot more time getting them to that persuasive statement, that sort of headline, and that would have eaten up a lot of time, and it's not really directly related to my standards. With the use of these AI tools, we were able to get through that part of it very quickly and spend the majority of our time working on the work that's directly relevant to the learning standards. I also noticed that their final results, these social media posts, were really higher quality than they had been in the past when the students were also writing the statements from scratch. But I don't feel like we lost anything in terms of them demonstrating their knowledge of the learning standards. I think we talk a lot about the fact that AI provides an opportunity for kids to cheat, to not truly demonstrate their knowledge when they're asked to do work. And what I really love is turning that whole idea on its head and showing kids how to use AI in the way that I think professionals can and will use AI in the future as an assistant. You know, it provided my students with a starting point, but then they had to exercise what I think is a much more challenging set of skills by evaluating what came out of the AI and editing it and fact checking it. And to me, that's a whole lot more important than whether or not they can write a punchy statement.
Paul does an excellent job thinking about how he navigates the maze, but then also really supports the kids in their navigation of the maze in order to support their science understanding. The thinking about how you want to utilize AI as you embrace the now, navigating for students, using it for your own work or to create things for students to really help support their needs, deepen your content standards, their work with the content standards. That's kind of a phase one, working with students, being mindful again of these kind of three really important things of the value that AI can bring. Is your teaching moment where you can help them be critical consumers and utilize AI, like Paul said, in a way that's going to further their understanding and learning, and not cheating or, misrepresenting what they know and what they don't know. And then they're going to be able to navigate it themselves, and you'll be able to use AI with your students. They will be able to use it and make decisions not only about the output of the AI, but what AI tools are most useful for them.
One of the important parts of students using AI themselves is for them to understand how AI works. So we're going to be sharing some resources to help your students navigate the maze. So in this image here, or this short video, you can see that there are a whole variety of data sources that AI is trained on in order to be able to do what it does. So the activity linked here at Machine Learning for Kids allows students to enter their own data set to train their own little AI. And then that AI can be used to help them develop a game, and they can then see their data in action in the game. So it's a great activity to help students understand how AI is developed and how it works. Another great resource that helps students navigate the maze with AI is the AI literacy content on Common Sense Education. .org. So you can see that there are a variety of topics here: understanding AI bias. These lessons can help students to develop their AI literacy. And we've shared a link to this website in the chat, as well as the previous content. And another resource is available. We're going to be sharing a kind of whole compendium of all the resources that we've shared here in this webinar in a Wakelet link that should be in the chat. This image actually comes from that North Carolina DPI's implementation recommendations for AI use in schools that we mentioned previously, and that's also linked in the chat. But this is a resource that students can use as well. Can I use AI on this assignment? And it gives sort of a little job aid or guide for students to ask these questions of themselves, and is it ethical? Can I use it for themselves as they work with AI?
And just a quick shout out to Vera from DPI with Digital Teaching and Learning is here in our call this afternoon. So appreciate all of her leadership and work. If you've clicked on that link and you're exploring it, we're the 4th in the country to have this type of guidance for our K-12 schools and districts. And so really appreciate how she has been very thoughtful about what that looks like in North Carolina, what that can mean for our teachers and for our students, and how to be responsible and ethical users too. So just want to shout out to Vera and that team that she's worked with at DPI to put that together, and thank her for lots of gratitude for the time and effort it takes to put that together and be able to bring that to everybody here in North Carolina, and really influential across the states too. So thank you for all your effort in that way.
Thank you. And, to kind of dovetail with that, earlier in our webinar session, Emma talked about the data that we've gathered from our AI fluency survey and how it showed that a lot of education systems, schools, districts don't have systems in place yet for how to effectively or ethically use AI. And so to have a resource like that from North Carolina's DPI is very useful. Okay, so we have shared so many links and so many resources and so much information, and it can be overwhelming. And I know that having attended webinars like this myself. So in order to expand your journey with AI and allow you to go and revisit these resources as time is available to you and based on your interests and needs, we've created a Wakelet, and there is a link in the chat that you can see there. This is a resource that we have put together and we will continue to curate, that you can go back to repeatedly and use to access resources and try new things with AI.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim and Amy, so much for everything that you have shared, these amazing examples of what teachers are doing with and by students in the classroom. Would love to prompt you with this question if you've visited or been a part of our webinars in the past. This reflection question about how you will develop your own AI fluency, and maybe it's specific to what that looks like with students. So thinking about, are you setting your own personal professional goals? It's great at the beginning of the new year here to think about what that can look like as we round out the school year and we think about what professional goals we might have. We would love to learn more about that commitment that you might make to developing your AI fluency. If you are on LinkedIn or on Twitter or other social media platforms and want to tag that as hashtag AI with the FI, would love to know about your journey. Maybe you tweeted originally as part of the sessions 1 or 2, and maybe could reflect there about the growth towards that personal goal. Would love to see that as part of our engagement on social media with you. The other piece as we round out our webinar this afternoon is in session 4, our 4th and final in this series. We're asking the question, how are educators in schools and districts and in classrooms engaging students with AI in the classroom? What does that look like? How could we showcase you and celebrate you as part of our session 4 in this series? So there is a link in the chat to submit to our AI Learning Lab submission. And I think that link actually might still be misspelled there in the middle. So it should be AI Learning Lab submission. We'll get that corrected on the slide and in the chat as well. But want to know what's going on, what's happening, what does that look like? And you might be featured like one of those teachers that you saw featured earlier in this session. So would love to have you contribute your ideas. This is part of a larger collective that we're looking to build across North Carolina and beyond. But if you'd like to be a part of our session 4, we would need any of those submissions by February 2nd, because that session is going to happen on February 8th. So we will again have now leading the way, championing AI in education. Says we want our teachers and our educators to be elevated, to show how they have adopted and how they are advocates of what that looks like in their schools and districts. And so would love for you to be able to do that. But as a side note, you're welcome to also be a participant there. If you haven't registered yet, I'm sure the link is in the chat for you to go ahead and be a part of that audience as well for session 4. So we've left you with a couple of things here at the end. We'd love to engage with you, AI with the FI, contribute your Learning Lab submissions, and also register for our 4th session, Leading the Way, championing AI in education. I will get that right before our next session. It was great to have you here this afternoon. We're going to stay on for a couple more minutes if folks have questions they want to add in the question space for our webinar. But otherwise, we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time. Thanks so much.